Well, now I want to get smart. Nigel, can you help us out?
Well, we can try. We can do a review of where things are and this. Thank you for inviting me, Sean. That's the first thing I should say. It's a beautiful day here in Westchester, 80 degrees. I hope wherever you are, it's nice weather and you're bright and breezy and ready for a review. Sean asked me about this early in the week and only saw it on Wednesday. So I put some slides together for you. I hope this is going to be a interesting review of where things are. It's not meant to be an in-depth thing, I don't think, at this point, but I wasn't sure about what the makeup of the group would be today, other than medical devices was a broad canvas that I was given. So I can talk about certain things, review different categories and things that I tell you a few things about what we're doing with a few clients. And I hope that generally it'll be informative. I think if people want more, they can contact me directly and do things the usual way. So without further ado, thank you again, Sean, for inviting me. And if I hit the share button, this should come up now. I know this is not going to work. It never does.
When you said things that we're doing, were you talking the royal we, or are you part of a team?
The royal we was I'm not exactly sure what you mean by that.
I mean, is it
Things that
you or are you part of a team?
things that I are working with other clients there or have worked with other clients. So um, can you all see that? Does that
Yes,
come
and
up?
if
I
you
can see
hit the
you all in the
little
right-hand
bottom
side.
right,
And if that works, then what I will do is I'll go. So my company, Smart Pharmaceutical Consulting, we're in Westchester, Pennsylvania, on Market Street. That's on our building. I'm actually in my sunroom today, which is rather nice. I'm looking out at sunshine and deer running around in the field opposite. So the title I was given by Sean was AI Reshaping MedTech Manufacturing. So let's dive in and chat a little bit about this. So it's a bit of an overview. Um, One of the things that's really big that I've been doing a lot of writing about, and it's interesting whether it's medtech or in biopharma or pharma, is one of the kind of misnomers I think that is being put out there, and you guys are very experienced in some of this, so I'd be interested in your opinions on this. Is that there's this idea that AI is the universal panacea type of thing, and it's going to solve all our problems, and everybody's going to be made redundant, and we're going to be useless as human beings because we've got no contribution to make, which I think is folly and it's completely wrong. AI is godlike technology. It's fantastic. We know its capability. It can do things that we can do so much better, so much faster, but it doesn't obviate the fact that the human brain is fantastic. It's creative, imaginative, which really AI isn't at the current time and probably won't be for some foreseeable future. One of the things that I really feel strongly about is our human agency, and what's the contribution that human agency makes. And the way I characterize this is in terms of cooperative intelligence, which I think is the human agency in conjunction with AI. I think that's much more powerful as a concept to think about. And what I will say in before we get to dive too much into sort of practical things is I liken this. I was telling Sean about this b before we got on here today. I liken this to we've got this, fantastic new piece of technology. I'll say relatively new anyway. Um, in the last few weeks, we were what was announced by the government that they were going to build this level 6 fighter pilot, which can, just do amazing things. Series 6 fighter pilot. Um, One of the things that intrigues me about that, as an example, is um, it's fantastic technology, but it's not going to fulfill its destiny, if you can call it that, unless there's a pilot that can fly it. And the pilots that we're talking about are the best of the best. They're the top of the Top Gun pile, if you want to call it that. And so without the pilot that has a developed level of acuity, capability, whatever you want to call it, the Series 6, generation fighter isn't really going to be that much great. If you put your average pilot, the recreational pilot into a level 6 is not going to be able to do much. If you put me, and I drive vintage race cars, if you put me inside an F1 car, and I can tell you that this was an embarrassment that I that I had to go through when I went to Maranello, which is the place where Ferrari have their headquarters, and I got in a simulator. You'd think that I was completely hopeless. I mean, I'd never been in the car. The point of making this, the point I'm trying to make here is we may be capable, or the technology may be capable and fantastic, in fact, but unless we drive it appropriately, then it's not going to fulfill the potential that we think it's got. And so that's why I'm a big raving fan of promoting this cooperative intelligence idea, that a human agency, which is still a brilliant piece of this, is going to be what drives this. And we have to think very carefully and very in a very focused way about how we use this technology as we talk about MedTech, whether we talk about building prototypes, whether we talk about manufacturing, whether we talk about how we design these things and make sure that we put the necessary documents and things together to enable it to go through a regulatory process, which for those of you that have been through that know that it can be a bit of a minefield. And when you're dealing with a product that might go international, so now we're talking about different regulatory bodies, it can be really quite an exercise. And so I think it's important to actually frame that in that way. So just in terms of product impact, what's the sort of things where we are actually seeing analysis of by AI or using AI? I remember going back about 10 or 15 years, and I was working with a medical device company that deals with radioisotopes. And this was for analysis, whether it's X-rays or what have you. And I was saying, I see a future. I see a future that is going to be where, depending on what time zone you're in, you're going to be able to get in through the internet and actually dive in, get a scan that's say done in the evenings and the early hours, say here in Pennsylvania. And by the morning, some doctor or some radiologist in Australia or India or Singapore would have done a fantastic analysis, and you would get the information back to your physician. AI is taking this a step further because obviously now this thing can be used through that, through the internet, to do those sorts of things. And the analysis, what fascinates me about that analysis is, we could be programming these things now with the very, very best interpretive diagnosis from, the equivalent, if you like, of the Nobel Prize winning physician who just happens to be the radiologist and has got the keenest eye, and we will train the AI to be the very, very best. And so that now is going to be applied to things like embolisms. If you've ever had a PE, and I have, having AI analyzing scans and things like that is really quite comforting because they can get to very, very accurate diagnosis and therefore a very accurate analysis, and therefore the diagnosis and the prognosis in terms of the types of drug or other therapy that you need can be nicely tailored. You think about robots, the Da Vinci robot is learning from surgeries. What fascinates me about this is this last summer, I had operation on my spine, which was from a car accident from 20 years ago that was finally causing me problems. And they went in through the back, and I asked the physician, a German gentleman up in New York, Manhattan Hospital. I said, is it going to be robotic? And he said, no, not yet. He said, but we're collecting that data for robotic applications later on. So that again was fascinating. There's a personal incidents that I can refer to where, my goodness, the surgeon that recommended me to him said, I can do the surgery on your back, but I'm going to hack your back open and do the conventional stuff. This guy can go in through a couple of little holes in your back, through a tube, and do all the things. And I said, how do you do that? And he said, well, the guy's developed a technique. And I asked the question, is it robotic? And he said, not yet, but we're collecting the data. So again, that fascinates me, being a technology guy and really interested in applications of AI now, coupled to technology, coupled to real world situations where there's two examples personally that I can quote, what I can already see and project, within several years, we're going to have something there which is really impactful. Another thing that I was starting to talk to Sean about before we got on was glucose monitors. They're pretty prevalent in terms of people. A lot of people are developing these. And I was sharing with, I can go into this a bit later, but I was sharing with Sean, one of the problems here is we can get very accurate analysis, but what does that mean in terms of relatable information to the patient through the physician? What do those numbers actually mean? Therein is a problem that they have yet to solve, and that's something that we can go on to. So what are the benefits? There's always benefits to things, and it's faster, great precision, and we can personalize things, and that is where I get excited. If you look at the drug side, the personalized therapies end of things is really coming along at rocket speed. And obviously, the things that we can do in terms of medical devices for that go along with that are similarly, I think, exciting. Cost is obviously, like in all things in healthcare, is going to be a driver. And I see, AI is a major potential for a solution or part solution in this area. I talk internationally a lot in the last week, India, China, Singapore, Dubai, and they're all talking cost. And we're going through this thing with the tariffs at the moment as to what's the cost of doing things. I talked to people yesterday about manufacturing costs, and they were asking me, we want to build something here in the United States to build something, but we also want a place back in India because the cost of people is 1/10 of what it is here. I think AI, where we can make more targeted um, production technologies, production processes, but also once we know more definitively what the product's going to look like, it's going to cut down the requirement for us to have prototypes. I mentioned here digital twins and precision medicine. What do I really mean by that is we can produce virtual replicas of the physical object and test it in the metaverse, if you want to call it that. So we're doing high-tech simulations, which again, it's like thinking about something that's relatable. If you think about designing a car, we know the car designers all use CAD and whatnot, whereas they got away from drawing boards and then clay models. They still do that to a point, but they use a lot of the stuff is done in the CAD, and it's the same type of thing here, but taken to another level where we can actually use this type of technology, especially for things like anything that is going to be implanted, like a wearable technology, whether it's a device that's going to, whether it's an insulin device, a pump or something like that, or a cardiac type related device, to be able to design those and test out all the failure points, I think is going to be really a major plus. And that's why we should get excited. And that's why anybody that's doing this, really, the train's left the station, jump on this, learn as much as you can, and start to work with people. There are a lot of new AI softwares out there for specific relatable functionalities, and they're being tailored with particular emphasis on whether it's on the regulatory side for documents and things like that. On the manufacturing side, there are different companies. I didn't put any of that on here because I didn't want to be seen to be advertising or advocating for any one particular company, but I can certainly refer to those. Let's if we look at the function, the conventional wisdom, and then the eye-driven thing, you can see here there's some examples, and there's some things which are pretty immediately obvious. The design process is manual and efficient. I've just discussed a little bit in passing the automated aspect of that, and the fact that we can do this in software or in process design in the virtual space, and test out many versions and hypotheses before we actually think about making and then testing manually, maybe one or two of these as it gets near. And there is value in doing that. At some point, you have to get it to the real world situation with the patient, because there are, as we know, there are things that will pop out. And just like with drugs, there could be differences depending upon what our ethnicity is in how the body reacts to something, especially if it was implantable, for example, especially if it was related to a particular type of material, or if that was then a drug medical device combo product, for example, then that could be something that becomes more a problem than just, say, something that's going to stick on your skin, that's going to be like a glucose monitor or something like that. On the production process, very much linear, still very much like building a car or building a drug. The thing I like about this, I get excited about this. I've built process systems, process control systems before, using digital systems, obviously. The adaptive nature of this and the data-driven, the potential for feedback loops in real time is something that really excites me. Looking at different monitoring vision systems for, I mean, I'm going back years. We have vision systems, but not like today, where we can get feedback loops and get other information. That as something comes down, say a line, a production line, the cameras are taking different images of it, and we can spot defects. So I get excited about defect resolution or defect avoidance, if I can use that terminology, because one of the big areas, one of the big costs, especially if we're talking about quality, is going to be in how we manage quality. Whether it's drugs or medical devices or combo products, a huge area that is an enormous cost and waste is in corrective actions and productive corrective actions, CAPAs and deviation analysis and things like this. There's an enormous line item cost if you look at cost of goods that's always associated with this. Why? Because we make mistakes, machines make mistakes. And if we're using adaptive algorithms that will allow us to scan things, and then we get into predictive circles, we get into the predictive analyses that based upon different operating conditions that we may actually predict now under these certain conditions for this type of product, then we're going to potentially see a range of errors that are inherent with this type of product that's between X and Y, for example. Then on the quality side, I just already mentioned this, the testing side, whether this is, random, it's always statistical, whether it's something like the square root of n+1 or something like that.
Hey, Nigel,
Yeah.
can we ask questions?
Yeah, by all means. Yeah,
Or should we wait till the end?
I'm trying to go quick because I want to cover a lot of things, and you're a diverse group, so I want to try and hit a little bit for everybody. But by all means, yes.
Yeah, in reference to the diversity, I love the depth of knowledge. I mean, you're really covering AI in so many different areas, but specifically to help us with context.
Yeah.
What is your focus? What does SMART do? Like, I'm having a difficult time where to anchor the information in terms of any specifics that you're focusing on, or could you help us a lot with that? Or
well, my expertise is, I mean, I've been in this game decades, and
which game?
I'm sorry.
Which game is it?
The medical technology, biotechnology, pharmaceutical arena.
Okay.
That's my name is called. My name is Smart, but Smart Pharmaceutical Consulting is a good logo, is a good handle
Yeah,
to
yeah.
get the people to attract. So yeah, I've been developing or manufacturing and consulting in pharmaceutical and medical technology products for the better part of more than 30 years.
Nice.
I would just like to interject. So, the reason why I asked him here today is because we had met earlier in the week. He had reached out. We had a fascinating conversation about how AI is going to be applied to our industry. And specifically, we had a conversation around, are you building um, medical technology for the market of today or the market from 5 years from now? Are you building technology? Are you preparing yourself as consultants in this industry for the market of today or the market of 5 years from now? And what I, would really encourage him to share with us is really this concept of things are shifting so quickly right now in so many different areas that many of us here on the call might find ourselves in a very different world 5 years from now if we're not proactively looking at um, which technologies are changing, which technologies are impacting our industry, where the growth is going to be, and how we're going to prepare ourselves as consultants and experts to serve those companies and their needs going forward. So I think, we have a lot of regulatory people on the call. We have a lot of other types of consultants on the call that are in all aspects of this. So it's like, where do we go, to prepare ourselves for this changing world? And I mean, I don't mean to overstate it, but a lot of the stuff that ChatGPT can answer right now fully replaces a lot of consultants, particularly generalists,
Right.
um, as well as marketers, as well as a lot of other jobs in the world. And this idea that what is the job market going to look like in 5 years, much less the medtech market? So maybe we can go, from there.
But well, you're absolutely right, Sean. There's only going to be two types of companies moving forward, right? Is AI-enabled companies and companies that existed once, right?
Right. I agree with you.
And as consultants, we have a tremendous role. Like I just sent you a note, Sean. I want to present to you. I want to present to this group, and we need to find a date. I want to talk about Labyrinth, one of my startups that I just got involved with, that is doing AI in regulatory.
Right.
Right? And totally going to change the game on how we do it regulatory. Been trying to connect with Michelle, connect with Daniel. He loved it. He signed an NDA. Daniel Berardo that was here a couple of weeks ago. It's brilliant. I've got other consultants. So the roles, and that's what I was talking about, Nigel. Right? If
Right.
with your knowledge base, if you can carve out like how does a consultant embrace, like if anybody's still talking LLMs, that ship has left the station. We're
Yes.
already into agentic business transformation, right? I'm
Right.
working with a company that got funded. We're part of, Invisible, which is a $3 million company that drives, Chat GPT on the
Right.
inside. And it's like you started off, Nigel, perfectly. It's not just AI; it's AI enabled with human intelligence and
It is.
integrated with human intelligence. So business practices will be, all AI. There'll be like three tiers, right? All AI, AI with the human validation, and then all human.
Paul,
And
did you say
helping
that you
businesses
think anyone who's
transform into
still,
that
did you say that anyone who's still thinking about large language models is left behind?
in business, yes, right? Because businesses, those are interactive. Hey, do a task for me. We've gone to the next level of agentic business transformation, ABT.
Absolutely.
Agentic business transformation starts with an ontology, starts with you really mapping the entire business, allowing data models to then leverage what you need done, bring in
Right.
external data. Like Nigel, you were talking about, hey, drop in my case, let that model go pick the right doctor in Australia so that we get the right combination. Right. That operating team the model will define who you bring in based on the query.
I think
Right,
Alyssa
so-
has a question or comment.
It was kind of further to extrapolate upon this. So I've been working with robotics specific to total joints when it first came out 20 years ago. And I helped with the design process of a total knee system. The biggest catastrophic failures that I had ever seen were with the robot. And that still exists today. And so if the person has enough expertise, and I think that this will translate across all consulting, I think it's going to weed out the generalist. I think it's going to excel the artistry in consulting. So the best get stronger and the weakest fall off. But it's the people that understand the nuance that will be really hard for AI to ever calculate, because the nuances are things that you pick up on reactions, on eye contact, on movements. It's the checks and balances that are unquantifiable. But also with the robot, unless you had done 100 cases, you could not predict that it was failing. It was the nuances in the machine's failures that you really had to have an expert eye and an expert awareness of what a total knee replacement should look like, because 1 degree or 3 degrees doesn't mean much to a layman, but 1 degree and 3 degrees means everything in the failure of the prosthesis over time.
At what point though, once you have enough examples in the literature or we'll call it the database, at one point, is that level of expertise in one particular area, does that become redundant? I still think that I totally agree with the points that you're all making, but I think the other part is the strategy of how you deploy these things in these various areas is going to be very, very important.
Absolutely. I think the people that are curious at heart, are the ones that are going to be able to use AI to even further their own admins, and further their own consulting and further their own knowledge. It's the ones that want to use it as a general that are going to get themselves into trouble. That's just my opinion.
No, I think it's a valid point. I mean, one's already seeing this in relation to discussions that I've been having this week with people. My goal that I'm still seeing a lot of across the medical field, which is completely broad, not just devices, combos, and pharmaceuticals. I had a discussion with a regulatory person, and I said, how are you using AI? How's that built into your regulatory process? And that person, it's a very experienced person I've known for 20 years. We've done quite a lot of work with them. And she turned around to me and said, well, I don't think it's going to be applicable to us right now. And I held my peace at that point, because I thought, how on earth can you be thinking that? I mean, just on a basic level, just to come back to things that you said and things that Sean has said, I mean, just using something like ChatGPT, the impact that you can make is pretty huge. And if you start looking at harmonizing or trying to pull things together for submissions across many different, I've got a couple of slides on this, different regulatory agencies, and in a very dynamic industry regulatory side of compliance side of the industry, where don't you think there are going to be, just like there are in any other areas, as we introduce a new piece of technology, it asks ethical and philosophical questions, just like it has. And I think we mentioned this at the start. At what point do you have the need, at least for a time, for human for the human element to underscore and if you like, essentially humanized validation of what the AI is doing for you. I mean, I see that it's inevitable in the short term, but I would wager that in the longer term, the AI is going to be, well, scientifically or technological, much better that on any diagnosis than anything that a human can come up with. And that just seems pretty obvious to me.
Well, and I think it creates art. It allows the person to take their blinders off, because the great part about it is normally you'll have to talk with 15 different people to get what you get as feedback in 60 seconds. So you can use your brain to dissect it and see what's more important and create your own algorithm of what's relevant and what's not. But the taking of the blinders off is so important, because it's rarely done in that amount of time.
And as you point out, I think you know what's going to separate the wheat from the chaff in terms of consulting is the people that can and it sounds like we've got quite a few people here that are able to do that. That they're going to be able to do exactly what you're talking about. The majority of people are not going to be able to separate the wheat from the chaff. And that's what's that's what's going to happen. It's going to be, if you like, a normal natural selection, that the early adopters and the people that become really sharp at this stuff are going to be the ones that prevail, and the ones that play at it, if you like, are going to be the ones that fail or fall by the wayside. Okay. So specific examples here on quality control, on quality things that we've seen is by applying a real-time AI to errors. Again, I mentioned this earlier on. Errors and trending is where I think there's an obvious position here, an opportunity to have a very, very substantial impact, and that's sort of intuitive, but we've actually seen that in real time. Again, the designs, just to pick up on what you're saying, Alicia, analyze previous prototypes, patient data, and then that changing regulatory climate is something that, just like we see in other areas of tech, the regulatory climate, which to some extent is going to be affected as well by the political climate. The world's changing in quite significant ways, we all know at the moment, for other reasons. That could also impact the regulatory types of processes, as we see countries that are going to dig their heels in and say, if you want to sell products in my sphere of geographic sphere, then they're going to have to be done, and they're going to have to perform and conform to regulations in our area, whether it's Europeans, whether it's North America, South America, Africa, or Asia. Certainly, in terms of design cycles, for the reasons that I've already outlined, not having to make prototypes that are, physical models until you whittle that down is potentially going to reduce cycle times by at least 30 or 50% over the conventional process. So the opportunity for gains here, if you employ them, are very, very substantial. You can generate, routinely, as I do strategy with companies, I show them a decision making. We use pressure decision making, OODA loops, and things like that, where we can show them, look, this gets you to a level of decision making, but then let's use, whether it's something simple like ChatGPT or some other model, to generate, if you wanted, thousands of design options which can be analyzed and then optimized for strength or suitability depending upon what the device is. The surgical implants tool is something that I experienced over this last summer. And because I have an interest in this area, I got the chance to speak to the surgeon, and they were telling me of the things that we're doing. And I said, well, how do you decide on these things? At the moment, it's still conventional. When you actually, if you take their prototype then and then actually, use the AI to look at what are the upsides, downsides, pros and cons, etc., the opportunity to come out with things that are incredibly sophisticated relative to the prototype is huge. Simulation is something I've done quite a bit of on processes in operating manufacturing plants. The opportunity there for performance improvements under equivalent conditions is very significant, and obviously again predictive failure points and potential longevity of to your point, whether it would be an orthopedic joint or something like that, or how long can an online glucose analyzer that you're going to stick on your skin, how long is it going to be good for? What's the battery length? What's the usable length of and reliability of something that's either implantable or sticking on your skin? You can test them and develop a database that allows you to potentially speed to market is going to be important. So you can cut down that development time, and obviously the ROI on that is going to be significant. If we can truncate development times by 50%, then obviously the potential for us getting more products out that are usable, that the market might want, could be increased greatly. So reduces in prototype to production, that speed to market, I think, is another area where we can really make some gains. Obviously, the 3D printing, that's something that I haven't got direct interest in at the moment, but I see the potential whereby taking that data and plugging it straight into 3D printers. I do know people that are fiddling around with these things. That is something which I find fascinating. Again, the implants and new surgical tools could be the area from my own experience that I see where there are some real gains that could be made. The predictive performance is something that, again, the simulation stuff is something that really does excite me.
Nigel, if I may, because you engaged the group and we went off in a few directions, I see you have 30 slides. We'll clearly not get through all of them. Do you want to fast forward to something you really want to make sure you talk about today?
Sorry about that.
No.
I'll skip as much as I can. I can get through these in an abbreviated way. So the simulation physiological testing, I think, is a big one. Whenever we can get away from having to go into people, and we can see whether or not something's going to work or not, is that longevity is going to be there. I've already mentioned that, so we'll go over that. The manufacturing, the sensors, the improvement in
I have to interrupt. Rama wrote a question, but we've been schooling her that she can just talk up, but she can't help it. Maybe it's a cultural thing. I don't know. Is it a cultural thing?
I feel terrible trying to interrupt, but I am interested in how you see MedTech companies, maybe SAMD companies, moving from ISO 14971 for general risk management of medical devices to the 34971 version for machine learning.
Can I get back to you on that? Rather than, because that would take a bit of time to answer, I think. And I want to make sure that what I'm suggesting to you is thorough and correct. So I can get back to you on that if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Robotics and automation. I think this is all, again, pretty obvious. Alicia mentioned failure rates and what have you in the robots that may be being used to manufacture. Again, the human error interactions is something that I'm always looking at. People come at me for a whole range of different things, and say, Nigel, how do we reduce human errors, and what can we do? So developing strategies for that around AI, I think, is really, really good. The predictive maintenance, again, is pretty obvious. Analysis of different inputs, kinetics, pressure, the temperature, how are things gonna work? Reduction in the device downtime, I think, is something, just like anything else, is going to be something that we would want to look at and have in some detail. The visioning, I've already kind of mentioned this in passing earlier on. We've got continuous improvement of vision systems that are going to create and opportunities to catch defects much sooner. Using the data of the Internet of Things, I mentioned the adjustments in real time, the alerting of line workers that the defects are happening, rather than letting things continue on too long and end up having, you know, a certain percentage of the manufacturing line thrown away because it can't be used because we've got things. Raw materials, I heard there was some supply chain people. Raw materials, tracking that, maintaining adequate, avoiding or predicting fluctuations, strategies for prevailing conditions that we can start to factor in and test. Again, with what's going on politically, I think, or pandemics, we could develop models as to what we might expect, and put a defensive strategy in place. Lean manufacturing is something I've written on extensively. I think the thing I like about this is we can do just-in-time manufacturing and have things delivered instead of sitting in warehouses, which adds to our manufacturing costs. So obviously that's something that I think AI gives us the opportunity to get away from. The demand forecasting and everything associated with that, I think is huge. I think I might just be able to get all these in. So again, I mentioned the risk mitigation. I think it's something you just mentioned. The generation of simulation modeling scenarios, I think, is something that provides great promise for us to improve manufacturing capability. And just as you see in pharmaceuticals, the manufacturability, the manufacturing capability, the process capability is something that's going to be very important from a point of view of getting through the regulatory bodies where they're looking for.
Did I freeze? Is everyone frozen?
No, everybody's shaking heads. So again, the idea of built-in process capability and continuity is significant, I think. Okay, very quickly at the end here, I was going to talk about regulatory impact just in passing. The real-time compliance metrics, I think, is important. The alignment between the documentation required in the various agencies, I think, and the ISO standards, which you just mentioned, Roma, I think is something that the AI can help us with. I'll come back to that offline if we want to follow up on that. Audit readiness, I think it is, again, is an area that we shouldn't ignore. There are opportunities there. I'm a great believer in, if the upfront issues are addressed for things like supply chain and testing and things like that are put in place, then that is a significant component that you need to consider for inspection readiness. And it can truncate the process for audits. We've actually, during COVID, I put together a protocol for the pharma companies, not the MedTech companies, but the pharma companies, for example, where we did and guaranteed audits and compliance against regulations to greater than 90%. And I did gangbusters over the internet using cameras and putting documents and things in secure rooms, password protected, etc. We can go a step further where we can get a tremendous amount more information in relation to, as we've said, supply chain issues, and companies that are supplying components or materials for the medical device. We could have them, if you like, regulated and pre-screened using an AI algorithm. And that's something then that would not only provide a greater degree of information that can be shared with a regulatory body, which shows traceability, for example, as it does in terms of having alignment between the suppliers and the company that is going to have its name on the associated through the regulatory body with the product as it's licensed. So I think we're almost there. Imaging, I'll miss
May
that
I
one.
ask, perhaps, can you, without sharing company secrets, can you give us an example of somebody that you're working with right now and how specifically you're helping them?
Yes. One of the areas is for a company that has a online monitor that has multiple different multiple different agents that it could sensor for, and it's for a wearable sensing device. So that's something that we're looking at. And strategies, I mentioned this right at the start, a strategy. This is why I stress the cooperative intelligence, the human agency component, as much as the AI, which is generating fantastic data. It's okay, thinking about this now, how do we take that data? What sort of interface do we need now? And what components do we need allied with AI in a collaborative way, if you call it that, to actually make that interpretable such that a physician can instruct a patient that for you, if you have these readings coming out, this is information which is telling you you're in a good place or you're in a bad place or you're in an acute place. What's lacking, what they're showing from their data is that there is a roadblock, if you will, in terms of being able to take fantastic data which they're now generating, which is much better than they've had before, because of the inbuilt additional advantages that AI is bringing to that particular early phase product, over how we are going to make that standardized, and how do we now convert that to, if you like, common language that a physician can use and share with the patient. So that's something that we're working on right now.
Thank you for that. Before we
no.
have time, I'm going to share a link here. There are 2 or 3 folks on the call who are maybe joining us in California. I would encourage you to click through on that and book a room, but you can cancel it up until the day before. That way I can be sure to get you in at the discount rate, because they are expiring the group rate today. In 2
So
weeks.
we're right at the end here, Joe, just very quickly, just so I can make your time.
Yeah.
Some challenges, privacy, bias, and ethics. And I touched on this earlier on, and I think this is really pulling things together. It's, look, there are these non-tech issues that we have to deal with, privacy, HIPAA, and other things like that. And you mentioned the ISO on the manufacturing. We do also have a negative bias in our thinking. So when we're actually applying this, I mean, we're just wired for negativity. I mean, that's just something we have to live with as a human race. So we need to be careful of that when we're applying AI, so that we're not interpreting things in an off-center way, if I can use that as a terminology. And then there's the guy, the elephant in the room type of thing, ethical questions about how we're going to deal with, if you like, autonomous decision making. I see that the lawyers will get involved here, and then basically we'll all have a headache, because once they get involved, they wreck everything. I don't mean that in a negative way, but I think we all know from life that when the lawyers get involved, common sense goes out the window, and they focus on the law, and it gets ugly. So I kind of leave it there, because we are running out of time. I do want to say, I think it's going to need to be intelligent, coming back to something Alicia said, agile, and it's going to be very, very, very patient-centric. And I think that's my closing point. And thank you very, very much for inviting me. I look forward to interacting with you all more.
Thank you, Nigel, very much. Sean, anything about 10X you want to conclude with?
Just anyone who missed my announcement earlier, can you hear me?
Mhm.
You know that put your email in if you want details about how you can sponsor a startup for $500.
Nikki is going to be our speaker in 2 weeks. Fan favorite. He's going to be talking about reimbursement for outpatient use devices. And next week we are still looking for a speaker. This is the best time of the year. I get a chance to reconnect with you in person. And each individual scoop of ice cream this year is costing $33.94. So be sure to put all of the toppings on. I mean, all of them.
Joe, did you need a speaker for next week?
We are looking for one. Have you got something you?
Yeah, no, I'd like to talk about Labyrinth for sure.
Okay, let's talk about that after this call.
It passed the Daniel Barreto test. He is very impressed. So.
Yeah, I love that. You signed an engagement with him.
No, he just signed the NDA and he wants to explore how we can use it. He's very impressed.
Lovely.
And then there was another lady, Athena Vissel, who is an EQMS specialist consultant in Rochester, New York. Usual friend of, I mean, you got thousands of friends on LinkedIn. And
Well, see if the two of them can join next week, and then I think we make a nice presentation.
You got it.
Now, for those of you who celebrate, happy Easter. And for those of you who don't, it still should be a lovely weekend. So make the most of it, and we'll see you next week. And soon, hugs and ice cream in California. See you soon. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Nigel.
Bye.
Thank you, Nigel.
Thank you. Nice to meet you all. We'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.